All right, very good. Okay, so again, we should be 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Who's attended our prior property management sessions? Okay, good. At least I remember at least a few of you being here. Okay, I'm going to go back to the website. Who has not attended any of the other property management sessions? Okay. I'm not going to really go back and do too much review. Matter of fact, I'm not going to really do any review. But let me take you to our website under the owner information tab. We're going to try to make these training classes kind of individual and unique. Again, today we're going to talk about evictions, okay? And we're only going to talk about evictions. We're not going to get off on tangents and other stuff. The first few classes that we did, we went off on a whole bunch of tangents. So if you've never seen any of our property management stuff, go to the website, go to property management owner information. This is a 6-minute video of me talking about the general services that we provide. Now, I have people all the time, agents that is, that come in and talk about the services and I'm interested. They start asking me questions and it's obvious they've never watched the 6-minute video, okay? Because they're asking me questions that are answered in the 6-minute video. So if you haven't seen the 6-minute video, watch it multiple times, okay? It gives you a very good overview of what we do. It's also, obviously, this is really designed not for you, to be honest with you. This is designed for the consumer. So to use Chase in the example we just had, he's on the telephone, he's calling some people out of the newspaper. You know, maybe they're interested, maybe they're not. Hey, just run to our website and take a look at this video. It tells you all about our services. Okay? It's very simple for the consumer to understand. There's also a couple other videos on here talk about the importance of taking care of lawns and pools. But we're going to jump down to the bottom. I'm not going to play this video, but this is a 3-minute and 49-second video of our eviction attorney, which is appropriate for our topic because we're talking about evictions today. Okay, this is Barry Lee O'Connor. He is he's an attorney, of course, but from my understanding, all Barry does is evictions. Doesn't do any other sort of legal work, and if he does, he certainly doesn't advertise it. He is the preeminent eviction attorney in Riverside County. All right. We have used him for, oh gosh, over 20 years. And again, this video is a nice basic explanation of the eviction process, but it's also a nice commercial for Coldwell Banker Pioneer Real Estate's property management department. So another nice tool, if you are signing these properties up, you're going to get the questions. That's why we're doing these classes, because if you're, and it's going to take you a while to get the complete experience to be able to answer all these questions. Again, keep in mind, Chase, who just left, I love the kid to death, but he is as green as they come, okay? 11 phone calls in 30 minutes, 3 leads, and a check. Signed up. $500 check is going to that young man today, okay? And I guarantee you, had one of those clients asked him detailed questions about an eviction, he wouldn't have known. He wouldn't have known how to answer those, and he still was able to sell the product fairly well. So, again, today's session is going to deal with specifics of an eviction, okay? You will, when you're selling this product, shut this down a little bit more. When you're selling this product, there we go, it's a little bit easier. You're going to get specific questions. You're talking to. One of the major concerns that landlords have when they're thinking about coming into a property management or any sort of rental situation is what?
Yeah, the people paying.
If the people don't pay.
Yeah, what happens?
I mean, they basically have a couple basic concerns. Are they going to pay?
Right.
And are they going to destroy my property?
Right.
What can I do? And honestly, what are they hiring us for? They're hiring us to make sure that they pay and they don't destroy my property. Okay. Now, as a general rule, not a general rule, but statistically, for our inventory, we evict less than 1% of our tenants on an annual basis.
Wow.
Okay? Let me give you a little bit of background on what that really means. You have owners that are concerned about not just evictions, but about tenants paying on time, tenants destroying the property. Okay? So with that in mind, and these are our statistics, this is within our company, I would say that 80% of the tenants that we currently have under management, I think the general public, the owners out there, would think are fantastic tenants. And I will describe a fantastic tenant as follows. They pay their rent on time. They take care of the property. We're not getting any complaints about them from the neighbors. We're not getting complaints from them. Okay? And they honor the terms of their lease. In many cases, they go beyond the terms. You know, we lease for a year, and they'll stay there for 3, 4, 5 years. And these, and up to 80%. And these are the type of tenants that if most landlords could be guaranteed that type of tenant, they would do backflips all day long. Okay? They're, for lack of a better description, the perfect tenant. Okay? Now, approximately 10% of our tenants are what most people, I think, would consider the average tenant. Okay? So we've got the great tenant I just described, and now we've got the average tenant. And I'm saying 10%, they fall into this category of they don't always pay their rent on time, but they're never near an eviction. Okay? Maybe they're late a couple, 3 times a month, or excuse me, a couple, 3 times a year. Our rents are due on the 1st, or delinquent on the 5th. So this would be a tenant that maybe a couple times a year pays their rent on the 6th, or maybe on the 7th. Okay? They take care of the property. Okay? We don't have any complaints going back and forth. Occasionally there's a repair that comes up. Legitimate repair that needs to be taken care of. Okay? But generally speaking, they're very good tenants. I'm describing them as average. But I will tell you, if you're signing up a new property owner and they're not prepared for a tenant, if for example, if you were to say, hey, I'm pretty sure we can get you a tenant, I guarantee you this is the type of tenant I'm going to get you. They're going to always pay their rent, but a couple times a year they're going to pay a week late. They're going to take care of the property, but on occasion they're going to give us a call and they're going to request a repair. Sprinkler valve was broken and this and that, whatever, minor stuff. They're going to move out of the property, and there's maybe going to be some minor wear and tear, but it's minimal amount. Wear and tear above normal wear and tear, but it's minimal, and the security deposit more than covers it. So I've got a $1,500 security deposit, the tenant moves out, again, they paid their rent, they're perfectly clear, they move out of the property, and maybe there's $300 worth of damages. We need to have the carpets cleaned, okay? Now, if you describe that tenant to a prospective landlord, and that landlord does not do a backflip with excitement, then you don't want that landlord, we don't want that landlord in our service, okay? And that's about 10% of our tenants. So in other words, if they say, wait a minute, you're telling me they're going to pay late by 1 week twice this year? I don't want them. You're telling me when they move out, the house is not going to be perfect? I might have to do $300 worth of repairs. Keep in mind that $300 comes out of the security deposit. So there's no out-of-pocket money to the seller. I said, yeah, that's what I'm telling you. We're going to have to maybe do some repairs that move out, but the security deposit is going to cover. If your landlord says, no, I don't want them, we do not want that landlord. Because the tenant I just described is a great tenant. Now, I just described him as average or good, but 80% of our tenants are fantastic. 10% of our tenants kind of fall into the category I just described. We have about 7 or 8% of our tenants, quite honestly, which I think most people consider an average tenant. Okay? And 7 to 8% of our tenants are chronically late. Okay? Chronically. Okay? They maybe don't take care of the front yard as well as we'd like them to. Maybe on occasion there's an issue, which is out of the normal. Okay? They move out of the property, and instead of having, you know, $300 worth of damages, we have $1,800 worth of damages, and we only have $1,500 security deposit. Okay? Maybe they're just a challenge. They require management. Okay? I would think that the average landlord out there thinks that that is the average tenant. They're a headache. Okay? They're a headache. These tenants, but keep in mind though, even though I said they're chronically late, they haven't fallen into eviction. They're late, but they pay. Okay? They take care of the property, but not exactly the way we wish they would. They move out of the property. It's not perfect, but it's not destroyed. The scenario I just gave you was $1,800 worth of repairs, a $1,500 deposit. So how much did that cost the owner? $300. I tell you, there are landlords out there that would give their left arm to only have to pay $300 or have a $300 loss at a move out, right? So that's about 7–8% of our tenants. Okay, now let's talk about that 2%, 2 to 3% of our tenants, which is what our course is about today. And by the way, the script that I just gave you, and it's on the video so you can play it back, you really need to have that in your presentation. If you have a landlord that you're working with, a prospect, and they're concerned about that, you need to kind of give them, hey, 80% of our tenants are great, about 10% are really, really good, and this is kind of how they fall. About 7–8% of our tenants are what I just described, and then 2 to 3% are the bad ones. You need to kind of have and those are good numbers, okay? Obviously there's statistics and there are percentages, and they're probably going to be off a little bit. But generally speaking, that is very, very accurate with what we experience in our office. Okay, so let's talk about our possible evictions, okay? So, with our evictions, we're going to have tenants that, actually let me back up just a little bit. Screening process is critical. Prior to putting these tenants in the property, if we're not screening them properly, which is normally when the conversation of eviction is going to come up. The owner has a question about how we screen tenants, or maybe we're going through a presentation and we talk about how we screen tenants. Normally you'll get that question about, well, you know, tell me about the eviction. You know, how do we do the eviction? What's it cost to do the eviction? Okay. If we screen them properly, which I like to think we do, 95–97% of the time, our screening process is catching this and getting these possible evictions out of the way. Okay. A 2 to 3%, for lack of a better description, a failure rate, I think is pretty good. Now, having said that, if you happen to be one of those property owners who happens to have a bad tenant and you're one of those 2 or 3%, totally unacceptable. Frustration, anger, blame, property manager's fault, you know, and I get that. They're hiring us to minimize, and in their world, completely avoid any possibility of an eviction. Now we put them in a situation where they're facing an eviction, complete financial hardship, and all sorts of other problems. So you're going to have an upset owner. So anyway, the screening process is critical. Let's go through. Let's go through the eviction. Okay, we now have a tenant. Whether this happened on the first month or whether they've been there for a year or 2 or 3, because by the way, we get both. We will have tenants, to be honest with you, that fooled us. We've ran their credit, which passed. We verified their income, we verified their rentancy, we verified everything. They've checked out clean. Which, by the way, before we put a tenant in a property, we contact who? Contact. Well, we're the references, but we also, yeah, okay, that's good. That wasn't my question, but that's a better answer. We contact their employer, we contact their prior landlord, we verify all that, but we also contact the owner of our rental property and say, hey, Shirley, we have a tenant, this is their credit, this is their income, this is their employment, this is who they are, this is what they're all about. You know, what do you think? We think that we're going to approve these folks. We are recommending basically approval. Are you on board? If the owner says no, then we go down the road and we find somebody else. But basically we want buy-in from the owner, especially if the tenant has a little bit of a checkerboard on their passing mark. Let's take a real-life example. Maybe they've had a recent foreclosure. Are we going to deny them because they've had a recent foreclosure?
No, it depends.
It depends. That's a better answer. I mean, yes, we are. No, we're not. It really does depend. There are some factors. And frankly, what it may depend on the most is actually the owner of the property. Shirley is going to be our example of our owner today.
Okay.
Everything on the credit looks great, except their recent foreclosure. They have a job. They worked at the post office for 25 years. It's solid. They have income. Obviously, we can't verify their present landlord because they don't have a present landlord. They're in a foreclosure. I may call Shirley and say, hey, they just lost their property to foreclosure, but the rest of they're making their car payments on time, they're making their credit card payments on time. The individual works at the post office for 25 years, super solid, da, da, da. And Shirley may say, oh, okay, I'm willing to work that. Or she may say, no, No foreclosures, period. No bankruptcies, period. No short sales, period. Now the only rule with that is if Shirley says no to a foreclosure, she's got to say no to all the foreclosures.
That's right.
Okay? You can't just pick and choose, because then we run into some discrimination type issues. Well,
Right.
why did you accept those people who just had a foreclosure and you didn't accept me because I just had a foreclosure? But anyway, we want the owner to buy in. And to be honest with you, one of the reasons we want the owner to say, basically sign off on the tenant is because if the tenant does go bad, I want to be able to call Shirley up and say, hey, you remember that tenant that we approved? We approved that tenant. It wasn't just Coldwell-Banker Pioneer Real Estate Property Management. We called you and we talked about the good and the bad, and we decided we were going to move forward with this tenant. So, now, getting back to where I was. We just put this tenant in, and let's forget about what their background is. Normally, one of two things happen on an eviction. If we're going to have a tenant that goes into eviction, it normally happens instantly. So in other words, we put them into the property, they pay their first month's rent, they pay their security deposit, their next month rent is due July 1st, and guess what? We call that a first payment default. Similar to what you have on a mortgage. And that's what the banks call it. Someone just goes out and gets a brand new loan on a brand new house, their very first mortgage payment comes due and they don't pay. First payment default. Now that happens on the rental side as well. Now, and we have our property management meetings every week, and I always am looking for tenants that we just placed in the property last month. If any of those tenants that we just moved in last month show up on my delinquency list, trouble. Okay? Now again, very small percentage, but our experience is if they're going to go into eviction, it normally happens in the very beginning of the tenancy, or at some other completely random time, a year later, 2 years later. Those people normally fall into some sort of something's changed in their life. They've been paying the rent. They've been paying, bam, 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 everything's great. They've been great tenants for a year. Oops, now, they missed January. What's going on? They missed February. Hey, what's going on? I lost my job. I'm going through a hard time. I've got a medical problem. I have a change of income. Okay? So you've got both ends of the spectrum. You have, frankly, for lack of a better description, deadbeats who maybe pulled one over on us, and now they knew from the very beginning they were going to pay their first month's in security and they were going to default. They knew it. And then we've got the other circumstance where people who, for the most part, have been good tenants. And by the way, a lot of the tenants that we have, unfortunately, had to evict over the years, prior to them going delinquent on their rent, we would have called them good tenants. We would have classified them as good folks, okay? So, it doesn't matter whether it's the first month or whether it's on month 10 or 12 or 15, now we have a situation. The rent has not been paid. Okay, so what do we do? Okay. Now, whether they go in fully through the eviction process or not, the initial step is exactly the same. We always file a 3-day notice to pay or quit in the very beginning. Rent is due on the 1st. It's delinquent on the 5th. So it's due on the 1st. We give them 3 days grace period. 2nd, 3rd, 4th. They can pay their rent between the 1st and the 4th or early, and they're considered on time. Okay? On the 5th of the month, they are technically late, and the tenant is subject to late charges. Late charges are 10% of the rent. So if the rent is $1,500 a month, on the 5th of the month, the tenant has a $150 late fee. It's expensive. It gets worse than that though. On the 6th of the month and every day thereafter, $5, $5, $5. So it's $5 a day for every day thereafter. So it's now the 5th, they haven't paid, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, they're incurring late charges. Normally they've gotten our attention by now. You know, we're looking at the list. We really start looking at that delinquency list between the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. Keep in mind, what did I tell you earlier? We do have a lot of our tenants that do pay chronically late. Okay? They pay on the 5th, they pay on the 6th. Then you gotta remember you got weekends, you know, depending on, you know, the 5th is maybe on a Saturday, and You know, so we lose maybe Saturday, Sunday, which by the way, we're open, our offices are open, tenants can pay online, all the rest of that sort of stuff. So it might not be the 7th or the 8th before we actually say, okay, great, now we've got a list of 20 properties out of our inventory, and we prepare 3-day notice to pay or quit. Okay, on the 3-day notice, the only thing that can show up on the 3-day notice to keep it legal is past due rent. So we're going to keep this simple. It's a $1,500 a month rental. They're behind 1 month. The 3-day notice is going to ask for $1,500. We're not going to put the late fees on there. You cannot evict for late fees. Let's suppose we've given them a fine of some sort, or we had to go over there and do a repair on a property and it was their fault. We had to go fix the yard. It was $300 and we want to charge that back to the tenant. Cannot evict for that. You evict on rent, not on late fees, not on a repair. Okay? So, we've now given them a 3-day notice for $1,500. The 3-day notice is exactly what it says. You have 3 days to pay. If we filed it, we posted it on their door on the 7th. So you have the 8th, the 9th, the 10th to pay the $1,500 or quit. I don't know why they say quit. It should say 3-day notice to pay or move. Okay? The quit is the equivalent of move out. So we're telling you right now, and by the way, of course, this is a legal document. You've got 3 days to pay. If you don't pay within the 3 days, we're asking you to move. By the way, how many of the tenants move?
0.
It's basically 0. It is so infrequent that they move. But it happens. And honestly, it's unfortunate. Sometimes, it's a little bit of a sidebar. Keep in mind, we haven't talked about evicting somebody yet. We're talking about people who are late. There has been a time, I think this happened 2 or 3 times in the last 25 years, where you were late on your rent. We posted a 3-day notice to pay or quit. Keep in mind, that does not mean we want to evict you. Okay? The reality is we don't want to evict you. What do we want? We want the rent, or we want some communication. We want something. You need to tell us what's going on in your world. But there has been times where we have posted a 3-day notice to pay or quit, and on the 3rd day, the tenant rolls in and gives us the keys. And we're like, wow, what's going on? Oh, gosh, you know, we were late, and it was going to take us 3 weeks to get you the rent, and you said we had to move, and we moved in with Mom and Dad.
Wow.
You mean you could have got the rent a couple, 3 weeks from now? Yeah. Wow. Really wish we would have communicated a little bit better on that. Okay? Because the reality is we don't now we might be counter blessings. But the reality is, under the circumstances I just described, we probably really didn't want that tenant to move out. We didn't want them to quit. Okay? What we wanted them to do is pay. Maybe we should rename it. 3-day notice to pay, communicate, or quit. Because that's the biggest problem that we have with a lot of these, is the communication is gone. And frankly, with the tenant, that's a two-way street. Okay, the tenant comes home and sees a notice parked on the door. What have we done to the tenant? We have communicated to them. Okay?
They get scared. And then
they get scared. Now, would it have been possibly better for some of our communication to be in the form of a notice and the rest of the communication to be a phone call? Hey, we just posted a 3-day notice on your door. What's going on? Is there something we can help you with? What's the situation? Okay. So it's a very small percentage, but sometimes that has happened and they've moved out and we haven't wanted them to. Okay, so now let's get into the meat of the eviction. We've now posted a 3-day notice. It's now day 4. No pay, no quit, no communication. They're still in the house. Okay. So normally, again, not that we don't call them before this, but if we haven't spoken to them before this or we haven't communicated with them before, we're on, hey, what's going on? It's day 4. Because now they might not even realize this. They are subject to what? Eviction. And I will tell you this, remember I told you we had tenants, a lot of tenants that chronically pay late? What happens when you chronically pay late and then every month you get a notice on your door?
you get used to.
You get used to it. And then it's like, okay, well, heck, you know, we normally pay her on the 15th of the month anyway, or the 16th of the month. And now it's the 17th of the month, and now we start paying on the 18th of the month, and now it's the 19th of the month. And we get the notice, and basically nothing happens. Then one day, and by the way, there's also, again, we talked about pay, quit, or communicate, and there's also no communication. One day I call Shirley, or Shirley calls me.
Yeah.
It says, enough!
Mm-hmm.
Enough! These people pay late every month. I'm tired of it. And I've had this conversation with many owners. And I said, and again, I serve two masters here. I got my owner, and to a lesser degree, we serve the tenant as well.
Sure.
But in the reality, I serve common sense. Surely, why are we going to evict? And I understand it's frustrating. And I understand you're tired of them paying on the 15th or the 20th of every month. But they do pay. And guess what else they do? You're picking up an extra $105 every single month in late charges. And they, guess what? They pay those too. Okay? But Shirley says, enough! So what do? It's now, we posted the 3-day notice. This tenant in his mind is thinking, no big deal. I pay late every time. No big deal. But again, we have no communication. We'll call him, he doesn't pick up. They just ignore us. Tenants do that, by the way. Well, don't bother me. I'll pay you my rent. You know? So now Shirley says enough. So what do? Step 2. Step 1 is 3-day notice to pay or quit. Step 2, you've all heard the term UD, or unlawful detainer.
Yes.
Okay, an unlawful detainer, same as a UD, so, you know, an acronym for UD, or unlawful detainer. That is synonymous with an eviction. We have filed an eviction. Unlawful detainer is just a fancy way of the legal world describing an eviction. Okay, you are unlawfully detained our property. You're holding. It's kind of like, I'm going to detain you against your will. Okay. Well, I can't do that. That's against the law. Well, the tenant is detaining our property against our will. You have to pay to detain our property. You're unlawfully detaining my property because you're not paying me anymore. So, Shirley says, go get him. So let's just suppose on day 7 or 8, we call it Barry's office. Barry, going to send you over a copy of the lease, and I want you to evict 123 Main Street. Okay? All he needs is 2 documents, actually 3 documents. He needs a copy of the lease that the tenant has with our company. He wants a copy of the 3-day notice to pay or quit, which should only better have rent on it. Again, I've given you a very simple scenario. This tenant is only 1 month behind, or there's 3 weeks behind, whatever it happens to be. Which, by the way, we could file the unlawful detainer much earlier in the process. Okay, you don't normally do that in the beginning because it just doesn't make sense. But, oops. So they need the copy of the lease, they need a copy of the 3-day notice to pay or quit, and then the third item they need is what?
Money.
Money! Which frankly is normally the very first question the landlords will ask you.
Who's that?
How much is it going to cost? And that's a trick question, because the cost of the eviction, the attorney's fees to pay Barry, is about, and it ranges, it's not set. It's about $700 to $750, depending upon the location. He charges a little bit more, for example, if he has to go to San Marino County. If he has to go down to the Temecula courthouse, it'll be a little bit more. But generally, $750. Now, who pays for the eviction?
I guess the landlord.
Ultimately, the landlord. But in reality, we've got a tenant.
Oh, but then you have to sue the tenant.
Well, but we have a security deposit. Let's keep this in mind over here. We have a security deposit over here. They haven't paid their rent. They owe them 1 month's rent. We have let's say we have a $1,500 security deposit. It's going to cost us $750 to get the eviction started. So I call up Shirley. By the way, this happens, by the way. Well, actually, Shirley called me in this case. And Shirley said, what did she say? She said, enough. I want it out of there. So, okay, great, Shirley. I'll call Barry's office. We're going to get the... Which, by the way, we cannot do an eviction legally. There's 2 people that can do an eviction. An attorney or the actual owner of the property themselves. Okay? Property management companies cannot stand in front of the court as the owner or an attorney. Well, number 1, we're not an attorney. And how do I know this? I learned this the hard way. 10 years ago, I had been working with Barry for so many years, I could do this in my sleep. So I said, hey, geez, we're going to talk to the owners instead of them paying the eviction attorney money to go to court and represent them. They'll just pay it to me. I'll go down. I can do it in my sleep. I know exactly what I'm doing. So guess what we did? We did it. The eviction judge, who I'd known at that time, I knew him for an extended period of time, was accustomed to seeing me in court. Who was at my side when he would see me in eviction court? Barry was at my side, my attorney. I'm there by myself. The judge, with a grin on his face, where's Barry? And we're not using Barry on this one. Lance, I didn't know you had passed the bar exam in open court.
Oh, gosh.
And I'm like, well, no, Your Honor, I haven't passed the bar exam, but I do have this property management agreement here that says I'm authorized to represent the owner in all matters, including, collections and evictions. And he says, that is correct. You are authorized to represent the owner. You can stand and testify on behalf that the tenant hasn't paid the rent. This is a valid property management agreement. This is what they owe. You can do that. But you can't stand as an attorney. And in order to do an unlawful detainer, what do you have to be? An attorney. Or Shirley could do it herself. You could. It's Shirley's property. She owns it. She could file the paperwork, and it's called pro per. She could stand up in front of the judge and say, I am representing myself. I am Shirley. Here's the deed to the property. I own it. I'm going to represent myself. Now, how many evictions have you done, Shirley?
None.
None. Okay. Most of my landlords have not the same answer. They've done none. It's the equivalent of I think I could pull my own tooth. I'm pretty sure I could do it. Real right. I get the pliers. Could we get it out? Okay, we don't do that, right? We don't operate on ourselves. That's why we hire professionals. So we have to hire an attorney. We hire Barry. We spend $750. We take it out of the tenant security deposit. Now, automatically that's a problem, because what does Shirley really want? She wants her rent paid. Well, I can't, and she wants me to do what with her? She wants me to take the security deposit and do what? Send it to you.
Right.
They haven't paid their June rent. I have a mortgage payment to make. Shirley says, send me the rent. So I said, okay, great. Which, by the way, can we do that? Can we take the security deposit and apply it towards the unpaid rent and send it to the owner?
Yes.
Yes, we can. That's what it's there for.
Says in the contract.
Okay? The problem is, if I take the security deposit and I send it to Shirley for the June rent, how am I going to get, who's going to give me the $750 to evict the tenant? Well, now I got to have you send it back to me. I say, I just sent you the security deposit yesterday, but now we can't start the eviction without the security deposit, or without the $750. So, if I have a security deposit, I want the owner's permission to take $750 out of security, send it over to Barry to start the eviction.
In writing or just a verbal?
No, we'll take it over the phone. That's fine. But believe me, we're documenting that in the computer. Okay. Now, in some cases, I don't have the security deposit. That's a big problem. Occasionally, we have tenants or owners that very early on in the process say, well, I want to hold the security deposit, which we can do. We say, okay, great, you are now holding the $1,500 security deposit, so I have no money. Now when Shirley calls me and says evict him, I say, okay, great. Oh, Shirley, we see that you've been holding the security deposit on this property for the last 2 years. We have no money. Send me the money.
Right.
Does that create a problem sometimes?
Yeah.
Why does it create a problem?
Someone
They
doesn't
want
have
to
it.
Because Shirley doesn't have it.
Yeah.
they want to extend
Shirley
it.
took that tenant security deposit, which is not proper, by the way.
Right.
She put it in her checking account and used it. Are you supposed to do that? No, those are trust funds. That security deposit should be, if I give it to the owner is supposed to take that money, set it aside in trust for the tenant. But at any rate, you're absolutely right. I now call the owner and say, hey, send me $750. No, I ain't got it. Well, the eviction will not start without it. What do you mean? I got my mortgage payment to pay. We got to get them out. I understand. It costs $750. Lance, managers, you guys stinking butt. I get it. I understand the frustration. But this is the business of owning a rental is a business. Sometimes your customers, when you're in business, don't pay you. Sometimes they do bad things. You've got to be prepared for that. Landlords need to be prepared for that. So, and by the way, you need to have that conversation when you are selling our service. If you have a prospective landlord that you're signing up into our service, and they are, from the very beginning, oh geez, well, it's really, it's critical that these people pay on time every month. Because if they miss, man, I can't make my mortgage payment, my whole world's gonna fall on my head, and I tell you, I'm just so stressed out, the tenant's not gonna pay, and you know, I've gotta have that rent payment, and if I don't have it, wow. You are not a candidate for it to be a landlord. Because basically what they're telling you is they need the perfect tenant. Which, by the way, I've already told you, 80% of our properties, we're going to get the good tenant. We're going to get the perfect tenant, okay? But as a property manager, do I want to deal with that if that goes bad?
Plus, I have a problem them wanting to hold that security.
We do. By the way, we really, really, really fight against that and discourage that. Okay, we do have some of our landlords that are emphatic about it. We've done business with them for a long time. We release a security deposit, which most of the time, frankly, is a problem.
Yeah.
There is a problem at disposition or something, but 90+%, 95% of our security deposits are held by us. Okay, so let's go through this process. 3-day notice to pay or quit. We've now figured out where we're going to get the money to pay the eviction attorney. We pay the eviction attorney. Barry's office prepares a legal filing and files an unlawful detainer, the UD action, with the courthouse in whatever county and jurisdiction it happens to be. Okay? Now, and basically, an unlawful detainer is in effect a lawsuit. We are suing the tenant. We are suing them for two things. We are suing them for the amount of money on the 3-day, and we're also suing them, which is really the main thing, depending on who you are, I suppose, we're suing them for possession of the property. Okay? So ultimately there's two things that could come out of a successful unlawful detainer filing. We get a judgment for the amount of the 3-day and only the amount on the 3-day. We get some court costs and attorney's fees, but it's a 3-day. And then we also get a judgment, which is really what we want, a judgment for possession, a writ of possession. Okay, so we filed the 3-day, or excuse me, we posted the 3-day, we mailed the 3-day, we've sent the money to Barry, we've got the unlawful detainer filed in court. Now, that has to be served. Barry's office handles that. We get a process server. Anybody ever been sued?
No,
Well, I have.
I do it small things.
Okay, well, I've been sued many times. Okay? And I've sued many times. I've been on both ends of this. Okay, well, if you're suing, I got to get you served. If you haven't been served, then my case can't move forward. And and vice versa. If I'm being sued, they got to find me. Okay? So in a lot of these cases, the tenants hide. Okay, but we're pretty successful. We get them served. Okay. Now, and by the way, even if they're not served personally by hand, they know they're being sued, because what else does the court do? They mail it. Okay, the tenant opens their mail. Ah, what is this? I'm being evicted. Remember our example earlier. This was the tenant that we basically have allowed, if you will, to pay late. Okay, for 9 months. What does that sometimes generate? Remember our 3-day pay, quit, or communicate? What does that sometimes do? It prompts some communication. And what is that communication? This is the tenant now calling us, and what are they saying? What's going on? I always pay my rent around the 15th or the 16th. What's this nonsense? It's only the 12th. Well, we've been trying to talk to you every month for the last 6 months. You don't respond to our calls. You don't respond to our letters. And the owner called a couple days ago, and what did they say? Enough! They've had enough. But, you know what? We did go by the property, and when we posted the notice, we noticed. By the way, I kind of skipped a part. Every time we go by the notice and we post a 3-day notice on the door, what are we doing? Looking around. We're looking at the obvious stuff. What's the most obvious thing we see from the curb?
The lawn.
Is the lawn being maintained? Are the windows broken? Is there trash all over the place? And the tenant responds back, you know I'm taking care of the place. I do know you're taking care of the place. Your lawn looks great. You know, we didn't see any newspapers on the porch from what we could see from the outside, but you're not communicating to us. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, I even told the owner, I said, gosh darn it, you know, they are taking good care of the place. And frankly, I told the owner, this is probably not an eviction that we want to do, but she's had enough. You have to pay your rent. Okay, so that particular scenario I just gave you basically has two outcomes. The tenant can get the message, come in and do what? Pay. Does Shirley have to accept?
Nope.
Not at that point. The only time Shirley has to accept is during the 3-day notice period. Once the eviction is filed, so now the tenant calls and says, okay, which by the way, what do they have to pay at that point?
Everything.
Everything, including what?
The attorney's fees.
Attorney's fees. Okay? So the tenants, by the way, are they happy with us?
No.
No, they're not happy with us. But they finally say, okay, I've had it. I'll be down right now with a cashier's check for the rent and the attorney's fees and yada yada. So okay, but hold on to your horses. Why? I gotta call the owner. Why? See if they want to accept it. What do you mean if they want to accept it? Remember that word I used earlier? They've had enough. They may not want you in there anymore. Well, I have 4 months left on my lease. You have violated your lease. You're in breach of contract. Now, in that scenario I just gave you, am I going to recommend to Shirley that she take the money and let's move forward, or am I going to recommend we continue on with the eviction? I'm going to recommend we take the money.
Okay.
Tenant's been a pain, but they have been paying. Grass is green.
Okay.
Property looks good.
Okay.
I'm probably going to recommend she take the money.
This is probably scared them into now they'll.
And now the thought is, okay, Shirley, boy, we got their attention. That communication problem we had before, I think we fixed. And I got to tell you, they're pissed. And by the way, who else is upset in this? The owner's upset. The tenant's upset. And who are they upset with? They're upset with us. That's the part that drives me crazy. Your anger toward your tenant is literally directed full blast at the property management company. The tenants, in this particular case, I really didn't want to evict you. I'm trying to deflect a little bit. It was that evil owner over there. Who are they mad at? They're mad at us. Okay? Property management is so much fun. So much fun. Oh my God, I pulled my hair out. Okay, so we now, Shirley has a decision to make. To evict, or actually she's already made the decision to evict. The decision now is, do I accept the money and cancel the eviction, or do I proceed with the eviction? Now, let's suppose she accepts the money. Accepts the money, the account is zeroed out, we call up Barry's office, dismiss the unlawful detainer. Go about our business. Hopefully next month the tenant pays on time, so on and so forth. Now, we've been doing this for 24 years. The scenario that I just have given you, by the way, none of my stories are made up. These are real life experiences. The experience that I just have given you, we have experienced dozens of times. 85%, let me finish my thought and I'll get your question. 85% of the time, we do what I just described. We end up taking the tenant's money, we cancel the eviction, and we move forward. About 15% of the time, we don't recommend. We recommend either to evict, or the owner overrules us and says, proceed with the eviction, I've had it. Which, by the way, the owners that do that are normally owners that are a little more financially secure. Because keep in mind, when I tell Shirley, I'm going to have $1,500 rent, plus I'm going to have another $750, I'm going to have $2,200 in the office today. Now, if she's got money and that's not important to her, just now it's on principle. Okay? Those are the ones that potentially want to proceed. The rest of them are bended. Oh my God, really? They've got the money? How quickly can we get it? And how quickly can you send it to me? Because I need to get my mortgage payment paid.
Right.
But I have had owners where we have evicted. We have gone through with that process. We have evicted them. And quite honestly, the business side of that decision and the financial side of the decision was devastating to the owner. Because they lost the rent. Now the property's vacant. Maybe we had some repairs to do. Now it's sat vacant. That, even though that tenant was performing poorly during the term of the lease, they were performing poorly, but at least they were performing. Now we've got, 60, 90-day eviction process. We've got to clean the property up, and maybe it's November, December, January, tough time to rent. Now we've got another 3 months of vacancy. You could have an owner with 6-7 months of vacancy, a couple $1,000s worth of repairs. Whereas it's tenant performing poorly, property not performing at all. And literally lose $7, $8, $9, $10,000 because that landlord was not prepared to deal with this particular type of a tenant, which is problematic. You had a question?
Yes, earlier you said, okay, the client contacted you because you got his attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's gonna give you the rent, 1,500 plus.
If we accept it, he's now prepared to pay.
Plus the unlawful detainer.
Yep, correct.
For the eviction.
Correct.
But the eviction didn't take place.
Doesn't matter, we spent the money. We filed the money.
Okay, so the 750 goes for.
Paid payable in advance, services rendered. The agreement we have with Barry's office, if we file, we call him up and say, hey Barry, we're gonna evict, you know, our tenant over here. Okay, he says, great, $7,750. If I call him, if I just send him the check right today, and I call him tomorrow morning and say, Barry, did you file that yet? No, we haven't even got it processed yet. Okay, cancel it. You send me the check back. It's okay, fine. But once he does work, files the paperwork, that $750 is
He's earned
spent.
his money.
Whether we've gone through the entire eviction or not, okay? It's not a matter of, well, he only earned $100 of it, we're only going to charge you $1,000. He charges us the entire amount, and he doesn't refund it. And frankly, that's what we pass on to the tenant. Once that paperwork's filed, they're all in. But we do cancel it if they pay. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. Once you go to the eviction process and you go to court, then you get a judgment?
Okay, let me finish my project. I'm taking the slow road through this scenario.
Oh, so you're gonna go
So let's now I call Shirley. The tenant says I want to pay, and so on and so forth. And I call Shirley, and Shirley says no. We're gonna let this thing go. I want him out. Okay, so let's take a half a step back. We filed the 3-day. They didn't pay. We filed the unlawful detainer. Gave Barry the money. Barry files the unlawful detainer, not us. Okay? Do the unlawful detainer. The tenant has communicated with us. I want to pay. We've said no. Unlawful detainer is proceeding. Okay. Now, on that original unlawful detainer paperwork, there's some time frames on there. Basically, to be honest with you, I should know this off the top of my head. I think it's 10 days. The tenant has 10 days to respond to the lawsuit. And the lawsuit says, you haven't paid. Is this true? If not, show us a receipt that you have, or give us some evidence that you paid. So the tenant now has two options. They have an option to answer the legal suit, saying, I have paid, or I haven't paid, but this is why. Property's uninhabitable, you know, whatever. I'm holding back for repairs, whatever. So they can answer and basically file a defense against the lawsuit. Or they can do, which honestly, the vast majority of tenants do, is they do nothing. Okay, now there's two different paths that happen here. Let's take the easier path. If the tenant does nothing, basically ignores the unlawful detainer filing, and I may have this wrong, but I think it's 10 days. On the day after the period of time, now the court can enter what's called a default judgment against the tenant. Okay? So they did not reply to the unlawful detainer. The court, it shows up on the court's calendar and says, hey, we've got an eviction case going on 123 Main Street, and it's now day 11 or 12 or 13, and the tenant hasn't replied back to it. And the court says, default judgment against the tenant in favor of the landlord. Okay? And that judgment is for two things. Excuse me, it's not for two things. It's for possession. It's for rent. Okay? So, you now get a judgment, what's called a writ of possession. Now, by the way, that normally takes between 30 and 40 days currently. That, by the way, varies depending on how busy the courts are. Courts get real busy, things take longer. Courts a little bit less busy, things move a little faster. But basically between 30 and 40 days, now again, the tenant has not filed an answer. The court sends a notice over to Barry's office. Barry calls us up and says, hey, the tenant, we took a default against the tenant. We'll get back to you and let you know when the lockout is. Okay? So normally between that 30 and 40 day window, the court will send a writ of possession to the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, assuming it's Riverside, or LA County or San Bernardino. They send it to the Sheriff's Department. Sheriff's Department will go out to the tenant's property, post another notice. This notice is posted by the sheriff, okay? And that sheriff says, or the notice basically says, I will be back on June 20th at 9:30 a.m. to lock you out, okay? And they normally do it about 7 days prior, approximately 7 days prior to the full-blown lockout. So now the tenant comes home from work or wherever they have, and they look at this piece of paper, and if they really read it, they should be, assuming they're still there, okay, which most of them stay. Now they're there, they see this, and if the tenant is paying attention, the tenant now says, oh boy, now they're really not messing around. I thought they were joking before. The sheriff will be here next Thursday at 10:30, and that is we've all heard the term, the sheriff's lockout.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it is. That is the last step in the process. So, we get a notice from the attorney's office that says, hey, the sheriff just posted a notice, they're going to be out there next Thursday at 10:30. Lance, we need a representative of your company and a locksmith out to the property. So, next Thursday, we pull up there, and by the way, if you ever experience this, when you're doing these lockouts, when they say show up Thursday at 10:30, you better be there Thursday at 10:30, or actually you better be there a little bit early. Do not go to the property. When I say don't go, don't approach. If you get there before the sheriff, don't go. Even if the property looks vacant, it's obvious to you. It is obvious. The garage door is open, there's trash all over. Geez, wow, looks like they moved out yesterday. So what's our instinct? Our instinct is, well, let's go over here and check this out. Let's go walk through there. Boy, you do that, the sheriff rolls up on you, you're asking for trouble. It'll be the last time you ever do that. The sheriff will say, who are you? Well, I'm Lance, I'm with the property. Hey, the next time you have a lockout, you park over there 3 houses down, you sit in your car, you wait for me to show up.
That's right.
We, at that point in time, do not have legal possession to the property.
That's right.
And on top of that, sometimes they go a little bit crazy with it, but they'll also say, I'm doing this for your own good. You're going to go in there, you don't know who's in there.
That's right.
Some of these sheriffs, they go in gun drawn.
Yeah.
I mean, they're walking through the house, and I've been these, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What is this?
Yeah.
You know, but again, put themselves in their situations.
Sure.
I'm sure it's happened. I've personally never experienced it, but I'm sure a sheriff in the past has gone into one of these properties, and it was obvious it was vacant. They went around the corner, somebody was in there, scared them, and altercation. Somebody got shot. Sheriff probably got shot. I'm sure it's happened. So their training is very clear. You go through and you make sure that that property is empty, 100%. Then they'll come out and say, hey, come on over, place is clear. They'll post a notice on the door. Now again, that's if it's empty. The locksmith will come and start rekeying the doors and all the rest of that sort of stuff. Now, many, many, many times, when you get to the lockout, who's there? Tenant's there, sitting there, opens the door. Pajamas on. Oh, what's going on here? I'm like, are you kidding me? You're surprised? Are you gonna? You know, it happens all the time. Now, in that situation, or let's suppose they don't show up, but they're like, oh, gee, okay, it looks like you guys are serious. We lock them out. Sheriff says, everyone out of the property.
Yep.
They've got babies and strollers. Oh, terrible. Small children.
Yeah,
They lose the property?
Well, this is the tenant. They're out. They got no, not their personal property. We're going to get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But everybody that's in the property, out. They'll give them 5 or 10 minutes. Go get your prescription medication. You know, get your purse. Get your important paperwork. But this is not. And by the way, we've done this with houses full of furniture. I mean, there's been no preparation to move it off. These people are living in this house. People are taking showers. You know, sheriff throws them out. Get your personal ball. I'll give you 10 minutes. And I got to tell you, there's some of these have been heartbreaking. I've done a few of these where I saw this coming, and I've contacted the tenant prior to the lockout. And frankly, I can remember some of these. We've managed a lot of properties, and we've had some long-term tenants. Okay. many of which we've become friends with, and we've become friendly with anyway. But now something's changed, financial or otherwise, hardship, whatever it happens to be. And I've had several where, although I was unhappy with the way the tenant handled it, basically taking advantage of the owner, not paying the rent, but genuinely these people were in a bad spot, and I really felt bad for them. But at the end of the day, the owner needed to get their property going. So I've called them the day before the eviction because I knew they were still there. And I've called them up and I said, I can't explain to you enough, I've told you this before, I'm going to be at your property tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Or sometimes they do this early. Sometimes evictions are, you know, well, not normally 6, but I've done them at 7, 7:15, you know, I'm in the morning. I said, we're going to be there. I just drove by the house. I was praying that you were gone. And I see you're still there. Now, I don't do this for everybody. To be honest with you, some of these folks are, well, whatever, man. But I've made these phone calls, single mothers, 3 kids in the house, school-age kids. Lockout is scheduled for 7:30 in the morning. You know, like, you want me to show up tomorrow morning with the sheriff? You've got 5-year-olds, and 6-year-olds, and 7-year-old kids getting ready to go to school. I said, you're not understanding what's going to happen. That is the reality of what's going to happen tomorrow morning at 7:30. Why are you still here? You need to get out. And guess what? Guess how many times I've done exactly what we just said, as far as the sheriff showing up. And these people had lots of warning. They knew we were coming. In some cases, I called them and said, don't do this. And they're sitting there completely oblivious, little kids, with the sheriff walking through their property. What a great experience for a 5-year-old. And it's get out. It's terribly sad. Now, frankly, I've had other ones that, not that I was happy with the eviction, but I certainly wasn't upset. Complete dirtbags, terrible people. And I sit back with a smile. Yep, told you we were coming. You deserve every bit of it. Okay? And I'm glad that you have an eviction on your credit, and I'm glad that you've been inconvenienced. Let's get back to the personal property now. Now, we've got, what do we have now? The sheriff has come, we've secured the property, we've locked them out. Okay? Now we have possession. We are now legally in possession of that property. Now, there's a couple different scenarios that could happen then. Let's give you the easy scenario. The easy scenario is we've gone to the property, it's empty, it's clean as a whistle, there's nothing left behind. And that is a real easy, that's a real easy eviction for us. Okay? We now have possession, there's no personal property left behind, everything's good. Okay? Then we go about our business. Maybe we need to do some cleanup, maybe not. You know, generally speaking, there's something that's required. We don't, on an eviction, we don't normally get the property delivered back to us in perfect move-in condition. Okay, but at least we can move forward. Second scenario is we have some personal property left behind, or an entire house of personal property left behind. In either case, now that we're at the property, we have to post a notice. It's called a notice of abandonment. Notice of abandonment basically says, we have now taken possession of the property, and you have abandoned some property. You left a couch. By the way, technically speaking, if they left a broom in the house, what is a broom? Is a broom personal property or real property? Personal. It is personal property. They left a broom. Technically, we are supposed to post a notice of abandonment on the door, and if the person was there when the sheriff showed up, meaning the tenant was still at the property, and we said, hey, get out, and oh, geez, I left a room behind. In that case, we have to give them 15 days to come back and get their broom. We have to secure that broom and protect that broom for 15 days. Now, if the tenant wasn't there, tenant was gone, got to the property, house is vacant, but there's a broom there. In that case, we give them 18 days. Don't ask me what the distinction is. To me, it's silly. But they get 3 extra days if they weren't there to come back and get their broom. Now, let's take that, let's give a more reasonable example. But the rules are exactly the same. Instead of having a single broom in the closet, now we have an entire house full of furniture.
You probably have to mail that notice.
You do.
The mail time.
Post a notice of abandonment, and you mail it to the last known address, which normally is the house that you just evicted them out of, which sounds kind of ironic because you know they're not there.
Yeah,
So we're hoping that what?
they put a
They
change in
forward
it.
That they got a forwarding address, which most of them don't. But now at least we mail it and then it comes back to us, return to sender. So now we keep that, by the way. We keep that envelope in the folder,
Right.
okay? So, and I'll get back to why we keep that in a minute. So now, again, let's give, and again, real examples. Now we've got a property full of property, okay? Stuff that they want. Their televisions, their prescription medication, all of their stuff is in there. But when we did the eviction, they weren't there. Okay, post the notice. Now, if they weren't there, I just gave you the rules. If they weren't there at the eviction, it's 18 days. If they were, it's 15. Okay, so we post a notice of abandonment. You know, have 18 days to come and get your stuff. All right? Now, hopefully, we have a point of contact. We have a phone number that works or something because we want to call them up. We want to get this stuff out of here. For two reasons. Number one, we need to get the property vacant so we can re-rent it. And number two, who's responsible for that stuff?
You gotta store that
I'm
stuff.
responsible
Yeah.
for that stuff, for that 18-day window. We have to store it, we have to make sure it's secure and all the rest of the sort of stuff. So, but normally what happens in a situation like that is the tenant is either at the property or immediately they come home later that day, oh my God, it's been locked out, and then they call us, well, you son of a gun, it's always pleasant, right? Always a fun conversation, because again, who's the bad guy? We're the bad guy, you know? So, now they say, well, I want to get my stuff out. We want you to get your stuff out. Well, I'll be there in 10 minutes. No, you won't. Why not? Because 10 minutes isn't convenient for me. Property management company. Well, you got to give me my stuff. Yes, I do. But you've had 3 months to get it out. Now you've been evicted. I'm not going to do this on your schedule. You're going to do it on mine. Well, when are you going to do it? We're available Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. Oh, I can't do it. I have to do it on the weekend. You should have did it last weekend. Okay? Now, the reality is we don't normally take that hard of a line. Okay? We try to accommodate them and we try to get them out. But the reality also is now they have to come through us to get it done. Oh, and also, by the way, this house is full. How long does it take you guys to move out of full house furniture? The last time I moved, it took me like a weekend. Okay?
3 days.
So, now when they do come to get their stuff, are we just going to say, okay, great, here's the keys, I'll be back on Monday? Can't do that. Why do we want to do that?
They'll be living.
They'll move back in. Right?
Yes.
Problem, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we get, so when we go, we pull up in front of the house, sit in the car, pull up in a book,
You s-
turn the radio on, we walk, supervise the move out.
Okay.
Okay?
So you stay outside the property while they move, or you
Maybe
you
inside.
stay inside
Maybe-
because
maybe
you go
outside, maybe
and
inside.
take position again.
Maybe, well, no, a little more challenging. I mean, we sit out in the driveway, and then maybe every 20 minutes we'll walk through the house and hey, what are you doing? I was here 20 minutes ago. I haven't seen one box move.
Yeah.
By the way, we also don't give them unlimited amount of time.
Okay.
We'll say this is how they normally say, hey, I want to come. I'll be there in 10 minutes. No, I'll tell you what. I can do this anytime between Monday and Friday, between 9 and 5 o'clock. You have a 2-hour block. A 2-hour block? Yeah, you got 2 hours. It's going to take me 2 days. Bring a whole bunch of people and bring a whole bunch of trucks.
Okay.
Okay? You give them 2 hours. Now you get there in 2 hours, it's, I'll get to you in just a second.
Yeah.
You get in 2 hours, they're obviously not done. You make a decision, if I give them another hour, they're going to be out. Okay, you give them another hour. Or, not only is going to need another hour, they're going to need another 10 hours. Time up. I'm locking up. When you want to come back? Can you come back Friday? I'll give you a 2-hour block. Next time, when I say bring more people and bring a bigger truck, I meant it. Is this fun? This is not fun. This is a pain in the butt. Okay? And it, frankly, at times can be very, very contentious. I'm now sending over, one of my younger female staff to babysit an eviction of a bunch of hoodlums. Dangerous. Which is why I don't normally send my younger female staff. But honestly, it's just as dangerous for some older male staff.
Sure.
I tend to have a little, adventurous streak to me. And to be honest with you, sometimes I believe it or not, will even instigate. You know, I'm not gonna, I don't know, it's probably not a good thing to do, but you're gonna give me some crap because you haven't paid your rent in 3 months, and you wanna do this, that, and the other thing, and you're giving me garbage out in front of the house, I'm gonna push back. Not physically, but I'm gonna tell you like it is. You know, I'm gonna say, like I say, if you wanted to do this on your schedule, you could have done it in the last 3 months. You forced us to evict you, you've cost the owner $4,000, you haven't paid your rent, I've looked at the house already, I gotta do carpet, I gotta do paint, I gotta do appliances, oh, and by the way, you haven't seen the last of me, I'm going to sue you again. What do you mean you're gonna sue me again? I'm suing you again for damages. I sued you for possession, you're gonna get sued for another $7,500. And that's I'll give, if they're giving it to me, I'll give it right back at them. Which, by the way, everything I just said is true. They've trashed the property, I'm gonna go get them again. Okay? You will have another, now it's not an unlawful detainer lawsuit this time, now this is just a regular small claims lawsuit. I'll be suing you next week for damages to this property. Now again, is that the smartest thing to do in the front yard of a property where you've got some people that are pissed off at you already?
No, because that creates
Probably not the
confrontation.
smartest thing to do. Which is why when I send my staff out there, it's like, no, we're not having those conversations. I don't want you to do that, but I'm getting older and stupider, and sometimes I do that sort of stuff. Okay, yes?
Who pays for the storage? We pay for it?
Okay, great question. This is how the storage works. The tenant is responsible. We're responsible to secure it and store it, but we can charge the tenant for that. Okay, and it's a very simple formula. Let's suppose the property was in the we have to store the property for 10. And where, by the way, where are we storing the property?
Yeah, that's my question.
We're storing it in the house.
Yeah.
If the couch was in the living room, we lock up the house. We are storing it in the house.
Yeah.
It's in the same spot. Now, could we hire a company, gather all that stuff up, move it over to a storage place, and store it over there, and then start working on it? Could we do that?
Is that a liability?
It's an absolute liability. We don't do that, but we could.
Okay.
We could do that. But if Shirley came to me and says, no, Lance, we're going to move this stuff out because I want to start carpet painting appliances, I don't want to waste any time, I'd say, Shirley, that is the stupidest idea I've ever heard, and if you're insistent on doing that, I'm going to send you a letter. I want you to sign it that says, I told you that's the stupidest thing in the world, because the liability is huge.
Yes.
Okay? You're going to break something, something's going to get lost, the tenant's going to come back, which, by the way, is always the case. Tenants come back all the time. You say, wait a minute, what happened to my TV? What do you mean, what happened to your TV? My TV was here and now it's gone. You kidding me? I was here for the eviction. We took 1 million pictures. You tell me where that TV was. It was right there. No, it wasn't. I got a picture of it right here, date and time stamp the day we did the share. That table didn't have a TV on it. Oh, well, maybe it was over there.
Come on.
Come on, but it happens.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. So, but basically we store the property in the property. Now, if it's a small amount of stuff, let's give a more reasonable example. The house is basically vacant. There's a couch and a coffee table. Okay? But we need to do carpet and paint and appliances and so on. Now, are we responsible to store the couch and the coffee table? Just as if the whole house was full. Now, in that case, we've got our pictures. We take the couch, we take the coffee table, we put it in the garage, lock it all up. Now we're going in and we're doing carpeting and we're doing paint and we're doing our stuff. We have secured and stored the couch and the coffee table. Now again, you have to use reason. How much stuff are we talking about? A whole house full of furniture, closets full of clothes. I mean, could we technically take that stuff and store it all in the garage? We could. Depending upon how much and what kind of stuff it is, might be problematic. Now the reality is, most of the time the house is full of personal property and it is what? Trash. Okay? I mean, they've moved out, but they've left behind. It's obvious. Every room is empty, but every room has the remnants of stuff that they really didn't want. You know, they've got some old sneakers and a table that's broken and some boxes and trash and just junk. Is that personal property?
Yes.
Are we responsible to store and secure it?
Yes.
We are. Now again, depending upon what it is, picture, hundreds and hundreds of pictures. We may also take that stuff, gather it up, which might actually mean putting it in trash bags take that stuff, put it in the garage, and again, it really depends on the quantity,
Is
okay?
there a
And then we
dollar
store it.
value, excuse me, is
$300.
there, oh, that's right, okay.
Yep. The rule basically, but you still have to store it.
Yeah,
Okay, and that's basically, we're almost to the end of it's amazing how much time you can talk about this sort of stuff. There is a dollar value. Now this is the rule. Irrespective of what we're talking about, we're going to store this stuff for 15 or 18 days. Okay?
okay.
If the dollar value is less than $300, garage sale value, by the way, this chair is left behind. Now, well, let's say these 4 chairs are left behind. If I went to Staples right now, I think these chairs are probably about 120 bucks a piece. Okay, so that's $480 worth of new chairs. These chairs are 6, 7 years old. Are these chairs worth $120 today? No. If you saw this chair at a garage sale, how much would you pay for it?
25.
25? 15? You guys are rich. You like it.
Oh, really?
This is a
$20.
This is a
$7.
$2 chair.
Is that a $2 chair?
In my mind, it's a $2.
At least $10, man.
Okay, at least 10.
This is a $2 chair.
All right, $2.
Garage sale values, not retail garage sale. We're talking the cheapo 99-cent store garage sale. So when I take a look at these, I'm saying, well, these are obviously less than 300 bucks. The owner at that point can dispose, meaning throw them in the trash, or the owner can, hey, I like this chair.
Keep it.
I'm taking this chair, I'm going to take it home. Owner could sell it, do whatever they want. Okay, but again, we're keeping in mind these are values of less than $300 combined. Now I got to tell you, I've been in houses that we've done evictions on. It's full of junk, basically. If you went through the house and you added up the retail cost of all of those things, it'd be 10,000 bucks.
Yeah.
Okay? No, it's not. It's less than $300. Again, that's $2. You know, a flat screen television, I don't know if it works. I don't know what's going on with that. Well, that used to be, by the way. They paid $4,000 for it because they bought it 5 years ago. That same TV today you could buy for 800 bucks, right? Well, how much is it worth to the tenant? $4 grand.
Yeah.
Retail today is 800. Garage sale value,
20.
$20. 20 bucks. Now you might pay 100.
Garage sale.
20 bucks. Now the tenant's going to come back and say, no, I at least could have got $300 at a garage sale for that. Not my garage sale.
Is there a rule to price the
I'm gonna come to your
personal
garage
property,
sale.
or
It's
just to make, to come up with a 300?
It's
or more?
very, very subjective, needless to say. And where you run into trouble, now keep in mind, we have stored this property for 15 days or 18 days. In most cases, I'm going to wrap up here in about 10 minutes, by the way. In most cases, they're never coming back. Okay, they're not coming back. If they wanted the chairs, they would have come back and gotten it. We're throwing the stuff away, literally. I mean, and again, keep in mind, I mean, the house has been through eviction. It's probably dirty. It's trashy. Maybe there's bugs in there or whatever. I mean, you look at it, oh, that might clean up, but it's like, God, where has this thing been? I don't, you know. Now the TV might be a little bit different, but it's still, you know, most of this stuff. All you want to do with it is just get rid of it. And when you want to go home and take a shower to get the stink off, right? Yeah.
I have a question. There's a house on Lillian Street over here, somewhere here, that I went to look at, and it had 2 plasma TVs and stuff in the garage.
Okay.
Okay.
Is
so
this a
I guess
foreclosure?
This was.
This is for. I mean, this is a house for sale.
No, it was it wasn't a foreclosure.
Okay.
It was a house for sale.
Okay, so this was the owner's property.
Yes.
Okay.
And most of the stuff was in the garage.
Okay.
Okay, so you already told us the procedure, but there's a lot of break-ins
Okay.
within the time. Okay.
Okay.
What happens? What happens when you already took inventory and the client house was there,
Okay.
and somebody broke in the property before they picked up their furniture?
Well, let me give you 2 different samples, because the example that you just gave me, was there an eviction involved in that example?
It looked like it was.
Okay, well, if there was an eviction involved, okay, and there's stuff left behind, and I'm responsible for that stuff for that 18-day window, okay, I sure as heck am not going to allow real estate agents to come in and out of my property, because now that property's not secure. You know, so if I'm reselling it, or maybe I'm trying to show it to a tenant, I'll let you go in there, and now something shows up missing, I got a real problem. because I have not secured that property. So if the tenant comes back and says, hey, my plasma screen TV's gone, and I see you got another for rent sign in the yard, and I see you got a lockbox on the property, looks like, as a matter of fact, I even called, and your office said, sure, you want to come by and see it, we can show it to you tomorrow. You've been showing, people have been coming in and out of my house, my TV's gone. Here's my bill. Okay, real scenario. This is a crazy scenario. This absolutely happened to me. This was about 10 years ago. By the way, the eviction process on a rental is also the same exact process on a foreclosure. Okay, we talked about this in the case of a tenant who didn't move out. But let's suppose the house goes to foreclosure and the owner is still there,
Yes.
okay, or the tenant is still there. It's the exact same process. Or let's suppose it's gone to foreclosure and we get the property, when we secure it, there's nobody there. The owner is gone, or whoever lived in the property previously is gone, but the plasma television is still there, okay? In that, even though we haven't technically done an eviction, but we've now taken possession of the property through the foreclosure proceedings, we post a notice of abandonment on the property, 18-day notice of abandonment. I'm now responsible to secure and safeguarding of that plasma television for the 18 days. After 18 days, I deem it worth less than $300 because it's, how much is it worth? 20 bucks. I throw it away, I give it away, I take it home and put it on the mantle. Okay? But generally speaking, after that I'm done. Okay, so let me tell you what happened to me. This was a foreclosure sometime in the mid-90s. Get to the property, it's vacant. We secure it. It has miscellaneous stuff. Personal property though. Okay, we post it for 18 days. Talk to the neighbors. Like a little different situation than a tenant eviction, but talk to the neighbors. Hey, you know, we're going to be selling this property. When's the last time you've seen anybody around? What do you think? You know, have you know, they come, oh, geez, they haven't been there in 5 months. So, right off the bat, we're pretty confident these people aren't coming back. They had junk, but there was stuff. There was things like a paper shredder, and there was a toolbox, a little box of tools, and I think there might have been a couch, and you know, stuff. A good trailer full of, for the most part, trash. We store it for 18 days, secure it, we do everything to the property. About 60 days, by the way, photograph everything. About 60 days later, guess who shows up?
The owner.
Owner. Hey, I've been out of town a little bit. I see you come over to my property and I want my stuff. Okay, this is 60 days later. Your stuff's gone, sucker. I'm sorry. It's gone. So what do?
They try to sue you?
They don't try to sue me, they do sue me. They actually come into my office and they say, they have a list. And they were nice people, to be honest with you. Come to my office, they say, hey, you know, yeah, and frankly at that time they really weren't after me, they were after Fannie Mae. They wanted Fannie Mae to pay. So they give me this list and they say, hey, you know, you guys owe us $800. This is my stuff and it was valued at $800 and this is what I want. And I'm like, I said, I'll tell you what, you know, I'll inform Fannie. I said, but we followed the procedure, you're way late. You had your opportunity to come get this, you're way past them. And quite honestly, it might have been worth $800 retail, but we deemed it less than $300 and your stuff's gone. I mean, it went to the trash. They had like rakes and, I mean, they were charging me. I had a rake and a shovel and a hoe. They went to Home Depot and they gave me, this is what it would cost to get a new rake and a new shovel. And, you know, I mean, any property that goes through eviction or foreclosure, you're always going to find some gardening tools in the garage. They're trash. Who comes back and gets a rake, right? So anyways, so I'm like, I go to Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae tells me the obvious number. Sorry, man, we did our thing. So guess what? He sues me. Guess how much he sues me for? $2,500.
Wow.
So I'm like, well, first of all, dude, why are you suing me? And second of all, you already told me it was only $800 worth of stuff. Why are you suing? Well, I figured I'd sue for $2,500 and see what I can get. So guess what happens? We go to small claims court. I am so confident. There is no way I'm going to lose. We followed the rules. We stored it. We secured it. We posted it. We photographed everything under the sun. This is slam dunk. 100% case dismissed. Lance, you win. Needless to say, guess what happened? Lance, you lose. And I'm looking at the judge. I'm like, are you kidding me? Small claims judge. I'm like, I didn't say this, but I'm thinking, you don't understand. There's rules that govern this sort of stuff. You're not understanding, so I lose. So what do I call Fannie Mae, by the way. I said, I just lost. I'm like, you're kidding me. I'm like, yeah, by the way, who's the judgment on? They sued me. They didn't sue Fannie Mae. They sued Lance Martin, realtor, failure to secure my property, or just improper disposal of my property. So I filed an appeal, thinking I'm going to get a smarter judge, Riverside Superior Court, because if you win or lose in small claims court here locally, you can appeal that decision if you lose, and you go to Superior Court. So I go to Superior Court, again, as confident as I was the first time I walked in, because there's no way, I mean, all you got to do is read the law. I followed the law. Guess what happened?
You lost?
I lost.
But on what basis?
Yeah, you know when they say you never know what's going to happen when you get in front of a judge? You never know what's going to happen when you get in front of a judge. To this day, I was, to be honest with you, furious about it. Now I laugh about it. But there was no proper basis for them to award that judgment to them. And by the way, they got $2,500. They didn't get the $800. They got the $2,500. To this day, I've been sued so many times just because of property management. It's just, that's kind of the nature of the beast. It used to terrify me. Now it's whatever, just another.
You get used to.
Well, but I almost always win. I think I've lost a total of 3 cases in my 25-year career. That was one of them. And frankly, all 3 of them were bogus. But guess what? They are against me. I have a judgment. I have a judgment again, and Lance Martin personally. Not against, yeah. Judgment against. Is that fun?
No.
Do I want to judge him on my credit?
No.
No. That's why when you get into these situations, and you can apply this outside the eviction situation, if you ever find yourself being sued in small claims or otherwise, to be honest with you, I don't care how correct you are, you want to try to come, even if I hate you. I hate you. You are wrong, and this is ridiculous, and you want $1,000 and you're ripping me off. Put that aside. I want to before I get in front of that judge, all right, what's it going to take? Will you take $1,000 or will you take $500? I will pay the extortion money rather than risk going in front of a judge and potentially losing. I would rather pay, and in some cases, and I've done this before, in some cases, it's been completely frivolous. You're suing me for $1,000. Normally, the suits that I get involved in are security deposit dispositions. They're suing me because they didn't think their security deposit was handled fairly in property management. That's, if you're wondering why I keep getting sued so much, most of it comes out of property management, which is what we're talking about. Okay? I don't care how wrong you are. You sue me. If there's even an inkling that you and I can settle, I will pay you even if it's wrong. I should probably cut that part out of the tape. But it ain't, because you never know what you're going to get.
Can't you get a protection for judgments against you?
What kind of protection? What kind of protection am I going to get? So, anyway, yeah, it's a little after 12. Okay, I'm just going to take 2 minutes. I'm going to recap the entire process, and then we're going to call it a day. Let you guys go to lunch. So, and then I'll take a couple questions after that. But let me recap the entire thing. And again, I've given you a lot of information. So you might want to go back and maybe watch the tape again and then go through this one more time. So this is the deal. The tenant hasn't paid. 3-day notice to pay or quit. The next step, unlawful detainer. Unlawful detainer gives the tenant 2 options. Ignore it. It goes down the path where we get a default judgment. And by the way, we didn't really even go through the answer part. They can answer it and they can say, wait, this is wrong. If they do that, really the only difference is now instead of getting a default judgment, now we got to go to court. So we will go to court. We will basically stand in front of the judge, myself and Barry O'Connor on one side, the tenant's on the other. Barry presents the case. They didn't pay the rent, yada, yada, yada. Normally these take about 2 minutes. 99.999% of the time the tenant has no defense whatsoever. We get a judgment for possession and a judgment for the unpaid rent. Once we get the judgment goes to the sheriff. It's the writ of possession. The sheriff goes out, posts the notice on the door, says, I will be back next week at 8 o'clock on Thursday to lock you out. We show up at 8 o'clock on Thursday with the sheriff and the locksmith, secure the property. We now have possession. If the property's vacant, easy but easy, go about our business. If the property has possessions in it, then we have to go through the securing of the personal property, that 15 or 18-day window. If there is personal property, we now get to the last day of the 15 or 18-day window, depending upon what we have. In most cases, we're just gonna dispose it, throw it in the trash. Now we completely have the property back. Now there is one last step, we kind of touched on this. Now we go through the property and now we get to kind of tally up what other damages we may have. We haven't even really touched on that. We've just been talking about getting the property back. In some cases, is the property destroyed?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay? We go through, broken windows, drywall damage, toilets missing, whatever. We tally it all up. We look at their move-in pictures. We look at their move-out pictures, which is the eviction pictures. We tally it up. They owe $7,000. Is the owner happy? No. Then the owner, we don't normally do this because it's not part of what we offer in our services, but the owner, when I just said, hey, we're going to come back and sue you, we've done that lots and lots of times, but generally speaking, we go to Shirley and we say, hey, Shirley, the tenant just left you not only with owing rent and the house is a mess, but it's going to cost you $7,000 to put it together. By the way, I shut off the screen, but if you go down right where Barry's information was on the website, all the paperwork for small claims is there. So we would say, Shirley, you can go follow your small claims paperwork, all the information's on our website, and then we would encourage you as the owner to personally sue the tenant for the $7,000 worth of lost damages, and then we show up as your witness.
Oh.
So if you sue the tenant, then we'll show up and you basically say, I'm the owner, but Lance did everything, and we say, hey, this is what we did, this is what it looked like when they moved in, this is what they looked like when they moved out, these are all the damages, we've got estimates and bills, here's $7,000, and guess what? We win. So, now, we've gone an hour and 20 minutes, and to be honest with you, that was an oversimplification of the process. There are all sorts of twists and turns in it, but generally, that's how it works. Yes.
Lance, I'm in the process of doing some mail-outs to non-occupant owners.
Okay.
And I have a letter to the owners.
Okay.
Can I have you critique the letter for me before I send them out?
Have me repeat the letter. What letter are we talking about?
Critique the letter.
Oh, proofread. Oh, of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
So, yeah, this is just like a solicitation letter?
Yeah,
We're interested?
right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you just strictly going after like property manager, or are you trying to get listings as well for sale?
I'm trying to get a property management
Okay.
for now.
Okay, well,
For now.
yeah, we absolutely,
Yeah.
matter of fact, we've got some marketing materials we can give you guys to put in there.
Okay.
I used to send a dual-pronged letter. I think I might have mentioned this in some other class. I used to send a dual letter, especially if I was sending it to non-owner occupants. And frankly, my main emphasis wasn't property management. My main emphasis was, I want to list your house to sell. So, but the letter could go something to the effect that, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, you know, I've gone through the county records, it appears as though you have an investment property in Reno Valley. I'm a full-service real estate agent, the market's starting to show signs of improvement. If you've considered selling your property, I love the opportunity to give you market analysis, blah, blah, blah. Having said that, I also understand that it's a vacant, it's a rental property. Have you considered property management? We're a full-service property management company, we can help you, blah, 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 blah. So, that way you kind of get the best of both worlds. You know, they might call you and say, hey, yeah, we have thought about selling. And that's the type of letter that I sent out all the time. And to be honest with you, it wasn't a long letter, but the bulk of the letter, the first paragraph or two, it was obvious. I want to sell your house, list with me. The bottom line paragraph was a throwaway. Oh, if you're not interested in selling, would you consider our property management service? You'd be amazed how many people would contact us for property management. But yeah, if you guys have anything like that you want me to look at, send it over, I'll proofread it, I'll give you some tips, and frankly, I might give you some extra stuff to insert in there.
That'd be great.
You can send
Yeah,
with
because the
it.
letter that I've been sending out was all focused at the property management.
Okay.
But that's what I
Can you
need
give us
to
like
do.
a sample of
I need to
Yeah.
or
read
something,
that.
because
As a matter of fact, let me see if I
I'm not
can.
so good at.
Let me see if I can
Yeah.
find something here.
Yeah.
There's a letter. I love this letter. It doesn't exactly work, but you can modify it. Give me just a second. Let me see if I can't find this.
So what you do that, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Okay,
I'll
it's
see if I
regarding,
can talk and chew gum at the same time.
regarding the judgment. When
Yes.
you get the judgment for the writ of possession,
Yes.
we know the procedure.
Yep.
But then you get a judgment for the rent,
Okay.
isn't it?
Yep.
Then how do you collect that money? Because of course, that's my
You
question.
want to collect the money.
Yes,
Hmm.
you, that's an option.
Oh, so
Because you have the-
you're greedy.
No, I mean,
yes,
it's the
you
purpose of
are.
getting the judgment and.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is the deal. Just give me 2 seconds here. See if I can't find this where we're.
I'm telling you, because I do, right now I do a small claims for
Okay.
my husband's company, and it's so hard to collect the judgments.
Okay.
You have a lot of options, but then you don't get a lot of help from the court.
Right.
You are mostly on your own to do it.
Okay. Let me
Okay,
show
maybe
you.
you give me an idea.
Well,
or-
it'll take a second to fire this up. I'll show you my letter I used to use, and it's just as good today as it was then. Okay, judgments. Judgments are an elusive thing. A judgment for possession is nice, an eviction, because who shows up to enforce it? The sheriff shows up, okay? Judgments for money are a little bit different. Now I have a judgment against you for $7,000. In order to, number one, I have to record that judgment. We'll show up against your credit and all of that sort of stuff, which is great. But I also have to find you. What happens to people that are evicted?
They kind of
They
disappear for a
tend
moment.
to disappear.
For a moment.
Okay. So, and we are terrible, property management, we are terrible at collecting judgments. But if once you have that judgment, you can record it in the county that it happened. Actually, you can record it in multiple counties. I mean, it will show up on that person's credit report. Hopefully, at some point down the road, they're going to appear. Or you can hopefully try to find them. Now, if you can find them and they have a job and they have bank accounts, then you can either hire a collection agency or you can go down to the sheriff's and then you can do wage garnishments and that sort of stuff. I got to tell you, we are bad at that. Now, we are so bad at that, we don't do it. Okay? We just don't do it. So, but you know, getting a judgment is one thing. Collecting on a judgment is quite another thing. Okay. Now, this is a very old letter. I did a different version of this, which looked a little bit better. This letter literally was written probably 30 years ago. I knew I had this copy saved, so I'll pull this up. So let me show you. This is a letter that I love. This letter. Now, again, you got to keep in mind. Different time, different place, different market. But I use this letter to prospect for expired listings. Okay? And this is how it worked. I took, and again, this was great. You guys saw the guy with the knives? Okay,
Yes.
this is not just sending letters. This is being creative. This is selling knives and showing up a year later to sharpen them. Okay? I bought like little cardboard tubes, like shipping tubes that you would see that were red. Okay? I had 2 little end caps on them. One end cap, I drilled a little hole. I bought them this way. You could buy them at a marketing company. And there was a little piece of a cord that came out the other end. So if you looked at it, it was a really cheesy looking stick of dynamite. Okay, you got to remember this is pre-December 11th. I mean, I was doing this back in the late 80s and early 90s. So when you opened up your mailbox, you had this little red tube with what was like a little fuse coming out. But believe me, it didn't look like a stick of dynamite. It just looked like a little red packing tube with little white plastic caps with this little thing coming out the end. You opened up, oh, and what was I trying to do, by the way?
Calling their attention.
I was trying to get them to open it up. If I sent them a letter with a Pioneer Real Estate thing on the front, oh, there's another real estate. So what do you do when you get that? I said, what the heck is this?
Curious.
Open it up. You open it up. This was the letter that was inside. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Smith, bang, your listing is dead. Okay? It was a firecracker, you know, bang. It just it blew up. You gotta go with me on this. You have to see the whole package to make it work. Okay, well, but again, I stole this. This wasn't my idea. We did this somebody else. And again, the letter was, now this was not the letter I sent. I used this letter as a template. I gotta find where I stored mine. But this was the template, and this is the letter that I wrote. Bang, your listing is dead. Your property at 123 Main Street has been deleted from the computer information provided by the local board of realtors. So, been deleted from the MLS. Drastic. Oh my God, my listing's deleted. During the next few weeks, it is likely that you will be overwhelmed by real estate agents and brokers that will contact you to offer you. If you've ever worked expired listings, is that true? People call and call and call and call. Some of these offers, whether by telephone or mail, or in person, will be of high quality, and unfortunately some will not. Is that true?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Before you make a decision, I'd like to give me a chance. So I'd say, I'm Lance Martin, I'm this, I'm that, yada, 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 yada. Okay? Then at the end, and again, what am I soliciting? What do I want
At least.
I want to list their house. And then at the end, I think I took this whole paragraph out, and I think I changed it in the paragraph, something to the effect, if you're not interested in reselling your property right now, but you still need to make a move, if you've considered property management, please keep us in mind. We're a full-service property management company. Thank you very much, Lance Martin, Pioneer Real Estate. Okay? What did I want? Now again, I'm marketing expired listings. I wanted a new listing. What did I get? Well, I got both. I got some listings and I got some rentals. The amount of people, and I gotta tell you, it was probably 50-50. And at the time, to be honest, I didn't really care about it. I wasn't doing property management by at the time. My mom was doing it. I had no financial incentive to do it. I was just trying to grow the company. But they'd call, yeah, come on out, want to list my house? Oh, yeah, you know what? But by the way, most real estate agents who are out looking for listings, do they do property management? No, they don't. And that's why I wanted to do it. I had an extra tool. Even if you're not interested in property management, enter this in all your marketing materials anyway. They might call you. I'm not going to call you. I have no reason to call. I don't want to sell my house. Oh, wait a minute. Martha does property management in her office. They call you up. You have an opportunity to talk to them. You get their name, your address from them. You then take 2 minutes. You refer them to property management, assuming you don't want to sign it up yourself. But now you've got a connection to them.
Right.
Now they're in property management. You guys have heard me say this 1,000 times. What are we doing over there? We are incubating. We are now incubating this person. All you did is send them a letter. They called you. You spent 30 seconds on the phone. You sent them over there. A year later, they decide to do what? Sell. Property management calls you up. Hey, Martha, remember those people you sent us over here last year? You're like, no. Well, you sent us some people over here last year. They now want to sell. Here's their name and phone number. Give them a call. Shelley was talking earlier about what are we doing? What are you guys doing? This is the guy with the knife. I hate that sort of stuff. But you know what? This guy's selling a $30 knife. He's going to show up at your door and sharpen your knives a year from now. Obviously, what does he want to do? He wants to sell you more knives. But a year from now, he's showing up, sharpening your knives. Come on, that's great.
Yeah, it is.
We're selling $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 houses. What are we doing that?
Yeah.
We got to do something like that. So anyway, I loved this type of a letter, and it serves multiple purposes. Now again, I did that from all the way up until probably the late 90s. Again, this is expired. You can use a similar letter. Now you wouldn't send "bang, your listing is dead" to a non-expired listing, but you could say something that you could be cute about it and talk about some sort of non-owner occupant thing, or maybe your listing's expired. Now again, 2011 comes along, maybe now we could get away with it, but there was a period of time like, well, there's no way I could ever do that again. You can't send, and again, don't misunderstand me. This thing did not look anywhere close to a real stick of dynamite. But do you do that anymore? Do you send something like that in the mail to somebody now because we're so sensitive to terrorists and all this sort of stuff? But all right, it was great. So just send the letter. Send the letter out. So you could do the same thing with the non-owner occupants. I don't know, come up with something cute or not. Don't forget about the "bang, your listing is dead." I noticed your subject property at 123 Main Street is an investment property in Riverside County. You might have to change this. Or you may say, it's possible over the last several months or years you may have been approached by realtors discussing the real estate market with you. So I love this part. Some of these offers, whether by telephone or by mail, may have been professional. Others may not. Okay? You can take the same exact letter, tweak it up a little bit, put some stuff in there. Maybe we do these by email. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you make a flyer that you go out and you hand out. I mean, this is just one. I've got a billion of these, not a billion, but I've probably got 400 of these letters, which were written 30 years ago. I am terrible when it comes to this stuff. I am not creative at all when it comes to this. I go through them, take the core of the letter, tweak a couple, 3 things, send them out. So, I love this one. I absolutely love this one. Okay, gang?
All right, thank you.
All righty.